Hey guys, Board now back with you, and on this video I'm going to return to Killing Eve, the latest series. So this is episode 2 of series 3, and the episode is called Management Sucks, which is a pretty cool term used by Villeneuve later on in the episode. So full spoilers from the start on this one. And a bit of a come down episode, I have to say, after last week. I thought the first episode got this season off to a pretty exciting start. It was quite slow moving, but the ending of the episode particularly was really dramatic and exciting and gave you a great hook for the coming season, and they certainly swerved us, as I was saying last week. But yeah, this one did feel a bit more of a come down, and I guess maybe that happens sometimes after a really strong opener. Obviously they like to pace things out and kind of set the table. And a lot of what this one is about, selling the consequences from last week, selling obviously Kenny's death. Caroline actually has a big role in this episode. She's in it quite a lot, and you get various people trying to get her to grieve properly, not to go back to work too soon. And so a big part of the episode is how the characters all kind of react to Kenny's death, but also getting the mission back on track, at one point you have Caroline trying to recruit Eve back, and you get two particularly kind of big moments in a way when it comes to Eve and Villeneuve in this episode. And one is Eve finding out then Villeneuve is on the prowl again, back out and killing. So at one point Caroline goes to visit Eve at the kitchen that she's been working at, and she shows her the photograph of the woman who was brutally killed in the last episode. And you've got the whatever you call it, the clay, the baking powder, which she just smashed on across her face. So photograph of the victim with that all over her face. And so this tips them off that that's the handiwork of Villeneuve, and that's kind of what Caroline uses to try and persuade Eve to get back in the game, that she needs her back on the case. Of course, Caroline, as we saw last week, doesn't really have that sort of authority. Officially, she's been demoted, but obviously she's not going to let that stop her. She wants to do this one way or the other. And Eve is taken aback by this, but she's very resistant. She doesn't want to get involved. She's almost lying to herself, or almost kind of worked herself up into that then the best thing to do is to move on, and that other life just caused me too much pain. So she's very resistant to Caroline trying to talk her around. But it's after Caroline leaves that we see the results. Sandra as Eve really selling it well. She goes to the toilet and just vomits, and we really see how it physically affects her. And then by contrast, later on in the episode, we see Kirsten, who's sort of reunited with Eve in this, and he is the one who tells Villeneuve, and that Eve is still alive. She left her for dead. And I think that's more of a shock out of the two, because obviously Eve probably figured that at some point Villeneuve would get back to killing again. But I think for on the other hand, for the assassin, she shot her, she left her for dead, she was confident then her job was done, and then Eve somehow survived. So I think that's more of a shock, but it's a great final shot of the episode actually, because like the response of Fiona and her just facial expressions and the music, it just captures like this mix of like angst and kind of disgust and sort of torment, because she didn't manage to finish her off, but at the same time it's like this, it's mixed in with like this sort of perverse sort of thrill. It's like, great, she's still around, she's still out there, I get to do it all over again, sort of thing. But obviously there's like this sort of twisted romance thing going on as well. But I did really like that moment, the way that was sold. But it picks up back up with the Kenny stuff in this episode, and the opening scene is actually his wake, which is at this quite sort of fancy like London pub. And again, one of the things this series does so well is really subvert what you think a scene is going to be, because we think that it's actually just Eve going down like the local pub like for a night out drinking or something, and then it's actually revealed then it's Kenny's wake. And she starts, or this guy, I think his name's Phil, I recognise the actor out of quite a lot, he shows up and he's outside and he's flirting with Eve all the time, and there's a nice reveal later on who he actually is, but it again captures that really awkward sort of just mood around these sorts of things and the way the characters are acting, because he keeps trying to buy her a drink, and then at one point she just like sort of shouts out, "Are you always this much of an asshole?" sort of thing. And it's later revealed that that's actually Kenny's editor, or was his editor, so basically his boss. And Eve kind of has egg on her face, because she starts asking Kenny's like co-worker who's at the wake as well. She starts asking him, well, what was Kenny working on? Can you give me any information? And that's when the editor comes over and it's revealed he's actually the editor. So Eve's kind of embarrassed, because she's obviously got off on the wrong foot with this guy and kind of hates his guts. So that's kind of a blow. Then that's then revealed, and she might actually need his help to get more information. But there's also another like new character, which is Caroline's daughter. So she shows up. We see her at the wake. And I actually recognise the actress because she's in Upstart Crow, the British sitcom with David Mitchell. It's a very familiar face. I was trying to think for a few minutes what she was out of, but she's makes her first appearance here, and she's another one who's trying to get Caroline to grieve. And she actually like strikes it off with Kirsten, who's in this episode a fair bit here and there, but the way it plays it is then he is kind of out of the game and he's not really doing anything. He's kind of there for Caroline, but that, I mean, knowing Kirsten, you kind of suspect he's up to something. But there's actually a really nice, clever reveal later on in the episode, because he actually gets close to her daughter and is kind of claiming that he's staying in London for a while because he's been told to. He's not allowed to go back to Russia yet. So he befriends her because she's not having much luck, like getting Caroline to open up and getting her to actually accept her grief. And so there's this reveal actually because Kirsten gives her a gift, which is like this typical sort of like ornament, like just kind of like just a tourist sort of gift, like, and it has like, it's either like a London bus or something with like the Union Jack like printed on, and he gives it to her because he sort of says he has no use for it or what have you. And it actually turns out later that he's stuck a bug in it, like something to track them, and it's because he knows obviously she's staying with Caroline, so that's going to end up in the house. So if anything of note comes up, he'll be able to hear it. And that's what happens later on in the episode. He hears Caroline and Eve talking. So yeah, that's when it's revealed it's actually a transmitter. So a clever little twist, but you sort of suspected, yeah, he would be up to no good before long, and that's kind of how the episode ends, with him and Vilna sort of reunited. He's kind of trying to play her off against Dasha, saying Dasha isn't really up to the task. You need a handler. You're back. You're part of the 12 sort of thing. But it's a reluctant, obviously, relationship because things have really gone sour. But I think, yeah, it definitely feels them by the end. You're going to have a long-term, like, relationship again between those two characters. But just to complete the other half of the plot, maybe the scene of the episode actually is Caroline, where she finally grieves, and it's when she's in a car, and suitably enough, she's outside work, even though she's not officially back at work, and she was told to go home in a previous scene, but in a polite way, like the new character who's taken like her job for the time being. Although with the actor, I sort of wonder if there might be something a bit more creepy about that character as well. But he quite reasonably says, you've been through an ordeal. I think you need to go home and grieve. So she's in a car outside the offices, and someone else who just works in her department comes out. We've probably seen him before, and he's like just come out to support her, and she's playing music, like just this classic bit of opera, and it's this funny sort of almost ironic sort of scene, but it's actually probably the scene of the episode just because of the way it like transitions into something a bit more like subtle and like kind of oddly sort of moving, because like she's her and the other guy, they're sort of talking about the case, and well, not the case, but talking about Kenny, and she actually says, yeah, what a way to go, like with like whatever it was, like clay Play-Doh. And that's when she's actually talking about the Vilna case and her killing from last week. But the way she turns it around and makes it about Kenny again is actually like really touching, because she basically says, I've got to solve this case for Kenny. He was working on it as well. I've got to do this for Kenny. And at this stage, none of the characters seem to know who killed Kenny. Although I might be misreading this, but I got the impression that Caroline maybe did. I just thought that she sort of hinted at it. But I might have been misreading that. I mean, if you think that was the case, or if you don't think that the case, then comment in the comments below, of course. But yeah, I really like that scene. It was the scene where she finally grieved and had a moment. But again, very focused and very determined to catch Kenny's kill, which I like a lot. I like the way they turned that around. So it's a big episode for Caroline, and I also like the scene in the pub actually at the start where her and Eve are just like going at each other, and Eve actually just loses it, screams at her and like storms out, and Caroline to cover says she wasn't happy with the buffet, which is great. So yeah, have it. And Eve is continuing to pursue Kenny's death and what the circumstances were. So she has his phone, which is kind of like weird and morbid, but she held on to it anyway, and she starts getting like text messages, and it turns out like the newspaper people, the editors trying to contact the phone, and that's when they meet. And it turns out it's encrypted, but Eve wants to know what Kenny was working on, and they feel there might be valuable information on the phone. So they persuade Eve to like hand it over, and that they can work together to try and encrypt it and get things going. And they don't really get much. The only thing is they get like there's a photograph of him and this girl Audrey, who I'm assuming is meant to be his girlfriend on there, and that's kind of a lead. But we see Eve talking to Audrey, and then there's a scene where Audrey's like seen meeting up with Caroline, and they kind of have a thing. So I'm not sure if that's meant to be something to do with some sort of a plan. But Audrey's obviously the first step in putting things together. So yeah, they have it. And then on the Villeneuve side of things, we get, which I think if you've seen the trailers for this season, I think you'll know like this scene like of like the clowns at the party, and that's because she's given this new partner to work with called Phoenix, and he's only 19, but Dasha persuades her to work with him, and obviously with it being Villeneuve, she doesn't want to work with him, but Dasha sort of persuades, this is your chance to be a leader, you can mould him, you can just get him to do what you want to do. But she also tries to apply this responsibility to it. They're saying, sometimes management sucks, but you can have power over him. So she reluctantly goes along, and they have a little moment which I think is like one of the weaker moments, because he tells her about his experience with killing and stuff, and it's actually quite funny because she keeps going, oh yeah, like an ex-relationship, that's child stuff. But then they have a more serious moment because he explains that he killed because he couldn't be with his boyfriend, and that's when they have this like moment of connection, and she's obviously thinking about Eve. And that moment I thought was a bit on the nose, didn't quite land. But it's interesting because they're assigning this kid's birthday party, so you get like this this bizarre image of them dressed up in clowns like uniforms as entertainers, and I guess it's that classic thing like scary evil clowns. So it's quite a surreal image, which is quite fitting for this show. But that's where obviously the kill is. And I think it's just one of those things where I think for people who haven't been so keen on the series since the first season, I think they sort of say it's lost its edge, it's become a bit too much of like a comedy or this dark romance. And I think you can see that a bit in this scene, but it feels like sort of a character type beat scene, a bit of comedy. But what basically happens is that Villeneuve it's obviously Phoenix's responsibility to kill the guy. He goes off, finds him in the bathroom, but he makes a total mess of it. He just panics, and that's the thing, because he just makes a bloody mess, which obviously is not the way to do it. Obviously going to draw, and that's it. Villeneuve, without giving him a chance, without trying to sort things out, she just kills him, just kills him, just shoots him. And that's kind of odd. I mean, I think it's one of these things they would do it, because you would have thought, having introduced him, you thought, okay, you could have a partnership here. But I think it's one of these things, because you see her back with Kirsten at the end, then I think it's something to like swerve you again, where you think she could be going with this guy for a while, but then lo and behold, there's a swerve, she kills him, and then she's back with Kirsten. I think that's what they were going for. But there you have it. That's Killing Eve, season 3, episode 2. And management sucks is what Villeneuve says when she has to kill Phoenix. So pretty solid episode. Not as good as the first one, but still pretty enjoyable. And I will be back with the 3rd episode pretty damn soon. But please let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Like and subscribe. And you can contact me on Twitter as well. But yeah, keep watching TV. I'll be back with more reviews soon. Thanks for listening, and goodbye.